Is there a general rule when it comes to school assignments during a divorce or after a divorce? Do the kids stay in the same school? Do they go with the parent who gets the primary custody? How does that work?
It's ultimately up to the parents if the parents can agree. You have to have an address for the children that they reside at inside the school district to where the children are districted in Johnston and Wake counties in particular, because almost all the schools in Johnston are capped and almost all the schools in Wake County are capped. So you really struggle to get any kind of waiver that would allow you to attend a school where you do not already live. If you cannot agree, most judges, particularly in a temporary custody situation, are going to do everything in their power, if they can, to leave the children in the school where they are.
Welcome to another episode of Best of Johnston County, brought to you by Breeden Law Office. Our host, Jonathan Breeden, an experienced family lawyer with a deep connection to the community, is ready to take you on a journey through the area that he has called home for over 20 years. Whether it's a deep dive into the love locals have for the county or unraveling the complexities of family law, Best of Johnston County presents an authentic slice of this unique community.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Best of Johnston County Podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Breeden. And on today's episode, we're doing a special edition of the Best of Johnston County Podcast, which we call Ask Jonathan Anything. And in this episode, we're going to talk about how child custody relates to kids going to school and how children interact, I guess, with their custody orders as it relates to schools, and kind of what the schools do when they're handed a custody order. We'll talk a little bit about that. Before we get to that, we're going to ask you to subscribe or follow this podcast wherever you're seeing it, whether it be on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, or anywhere else, so that you'll be aware of future episodes of the Best Johnston County Podcast. If you would be so kind as to share this episode or other episodes of the Best Johnston County Podcast with your friends, that would be very appreciated. And if you'd also maybe share it on your Instagram stories and tag Best of Johnston County, that would help us grow the audience of this show, so more and more people will learn more about the Best Johnston County Podcast and what is great about Johnston County, which is what we're trying to promote every week. So Raena's here to ask us these questions. How are you, Raena?
I'm doing good. How are you?
All right, good. So
I figured, we've got school starting this week for a lot of our traditional calendar high schools and middle schools and elementary schools in both Wake and Johnston County. We thought we'd talk about how custody agreements affect schools and school assignments.
All right.
So first question, is there a general rule when it comes to school assignments during a divorce or after a divorce? Do the kids stay in the same school? Do they go with the parent who gets the primary custody? How does that work?
It's ultimately up to the parents if the parents can agree. You have to have an address for the children that they reside at inside the school district to where the children are districted in Johnston and Wake counties in particular, because almost all the schools in Johnston are capped and almost all the schools in Wake County are capped. So you really struggle to get any kind of waiver that would allow you to attend a school where you do not already live. If you cannot agree, most judges, particularly in a temporary custody situation, are going to do everything in their power, if they can, to leave the children in the school where they are, if they find that's in their best interest, because school is a safe place for most children.
Yes.
And when their parents' marriages is falling apart, they often don't feel safe. Everything is sort of unnerving. Things are not the way they were. They're not seeing both parents every day, but they can go to school and see their teacher and their friends every day. And so everybody's, I think, goal, and most judges, if they can, would like to see the children's schools stay where they are and stay with the feeder schools if they're going to be changing schools from primary to middle, from middle to high school or whatever throughout the process. But, that isn't always the case.
I mean, I know from experience, it's not fun to change schools between middle school and high school, and you go to a new high school and you don't know anybody.
Right. And, sometimes the parents can't afford to stay in the school district, and, they both move out of the school district. And so you can probably finish the school year in that scenario, but I don't know that they're going to let you come back if they know you're living somewhere else, given that everything is capped. These schools are really overcrowded. It just kind of depends. It doesn't have to be the primary custodian. It just has to be one of the parents living in that district. And then, of course, if you're not the parent in that district, if you're not both in it, and you got the bus, then you got to be able to get the children to and from school during your custodial time, and people have to work, so that can be hard too.
Yep. Okay. So, like, if a parent wants to change the school assignment for their kids, so say like one parent lives at one address and the other parent lives at the other address, and they want to change the school assignment, they can use the other address for the child, even though they're both in the same county but assigned to different schools. Can they just switch to the other parent's address and send the kid to that school? Do they need to ask permission from the court or from the other parent? How does that work?
No, I mean, I think if the parents agree, they can agree to enroll the child at whatever school they agree to using whichever address they would like to use. And I've seen parents use a grandparent's address as well, particularly if sometimes you move out of one home, you got to live with your parents for a while, grandma's in the district, and mom's staying there with grandma for a while, and they enroll the kid in that school, and then mom moves out of that district. So, I mean, it really just depends. Sometimes the parents don't agree where the kids go to school. And we've had those hearings as we record this in late August. We've been having those hearings this August, and we have those hearings every August in July. And oftentimes, we have the hearings, maybe they don't agree on which school district, or they live in different school districts. But, it seems the hearings this year were kind of, what type of school? Public, charter, or homeschool? And so we had cases involving sort of all three this year where parents were disagreeing on whether it should, which it should be. And the court had to decide which they thought was best for the children because the parents could not agree. So if you don't have an agreement, you can file a custody action. And if you have a custody order and it doesn't address where the kids go to school, you can file a motion, go back, and the judge will pick where the child goes to school. Yeah. I don't think that that's ever best for kids because the judge doesn't know you or your schedule or the kid or anything else. If they don't agree, the judge will do it.
Yeah. Well, and what if the school's capped? The judge can't send a kid to a school that doesn't have space for him.
Correct. The judge cannot send a kid into a capped school, or they cannot send a kid to a school that's not already districted to where it is. We've run into that many times practicing law here in Johnston County, where you got parents. We did one where dad lived in Fuquay, Raena, and mom moved to Princeton. And what the parents wanted to do is put the kid at McGee's Crossroads Elementary. And now the mom lived in Johnston County, but nobody lived in the McGee school district.
No.
And the school board attorney at the time, Jimmy Lawrence, was like, no, we're not doing that. No. And the judges know that they can't do that.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Good, yeah.
So we ended up having a hearing, and the judge decided the kid would go to Clivet Springs down there in Harnett County, right outside of Fuquay. The kid would go to that school where the kid had been going to school, and mom would have to figure out how to get the kid from Princeton because she was the one that moved.
Got it.
But in that case, the mom was working in Fuquay, Raena anyway. It worked out fine.
Okay.
And, she was with her boyfriend out there. Of course, that relationship didn't last 6 months. Before the school year was over, mom was back this way. So it happens. So that's another reason why the court will try to keep the kids, particularly if the other parent if it's temporary or their living situation appears to be temporary, living with a boyfriend, living with a new girlfriend. That's temporary by nature. Yeah. Let's not uproot the kid if we can humanly help.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely not. Okay, so how should divorced parents handle school expenses like lunch money, field trip fees, yearbook costs, school supplies? Do judges generally want them to split it 50-50? Is it included in child support? How does that work?
It depends, right? I mean, every judge does it differently. I think in general, the school expenses are often split. My experience with the lunch money in particular usually is whoever the custodial parent is that day covers the lunch money. That is part of feeding a child. Yeah. And I think child support covers feeding a child. And I think if you have the child, if it's 50-50, you pay your week, I pay my week kind of thing. When it comes to discretionary stuff like yearbooks, because the other thing about lunch is the parent could make the lunch. You don't have to buy the lunch for $4. And I think now a lot of schools, it's free lunch for everybody.
Yeah, it was during COVID. I know that.
Well, and they're bringing it back in some of the counties to where it's going to be free lunch for everybody. So that's not as big a thing as it was in the past. Yearbooks, people often will split those. Extracurricular activities outside of school, parents usually split those. Parents often, usually whatever, most judges will order the parents to split the uninsured co-pays on insurance,
Mm-hmm.
these sort of uninsured expenses. Now, it isn't always 50-50. Now, some cases, one parent makes twice what the other parent made.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll be 66-33, something like that.
Got it.
But a lot of these expenses are not a ton. So
No,
a lot of
but-
times people will split them. People often will split orthodontics bills,
Mhm.
that kind of stuff.
Yep. Okay. So, how should divorced parents go about communicating with the school and the teachers? Should they do it separately or together?
I think it is better to do it together if possible. But there are a lot of unhealthy relationships out there, a lot of domestic violence, a lot of controlling, abusive behavior by men and women. And so that may not be a safe thing mentally, possibly a safe thing physically for both parents in a relationship.
Yeah.
But let's take away those sort of outliers where you have abuse or neglect, stuff like that. In most cases, if people are able to get along and communicate at some base level, I think it is important that you communicate together if possible. Meaning, if I send the teacher an email, I should copy my spouse.
Yes.
And then the teacher could reply all back, and then we're all dealing with the same information.
Yes.
Most schools, particularly with the elementary schools, use the Class Dojo app or something like that. Everybody can be on that. They can find out who's bringing the cupcakes. They can see the pictures of the artwork, can find out when the school play is, that kind of stuff. That information is available to everybody. If possible, I think it'd be great. And we do parent-teacher conferences in October. They do them every year near the end of the first grading period. If the parents could go together, that would be great. Now, the school system will communicate with you separately. The school system will have separate parent-teacher conferences. The school system will send separate emails to the parents if that's what needs to be done. In the vast majority of cases, both parents have joint legal custody, which means they have to agree on what kind of schooling the kid's going to do, public, private, home, whatever, charter. They need to agree on major medical decisions when it comes to the child, things that would change the outward appearance. These are all things that are sort of in joint legal custody, including with the education, meaning that each parent if one parent gets the report card, they should share it with the other parent. If one parent gets notice that there's going to be a play or a parent-teacher conference, they should share it with the other parent. And the vast majority of parents do that. Unfortunately, not all parents are in that position, but the school system is aware of that. And if you're in that position, you can go and you can talk to the principal and you can tell them what's going on and you can take them a copy of your order and they will communicate with you the way you want to be communicated. And they're going to communicate with him too. The one thing they can't do is not tell the other side anything.
Yeah.
If it's a joint legal situation. And if you don't have any court order at all, the presumption of the law is it's joint legal. It's only not joint legal if a judge says it's sole legal, which is rare. So if you have no order and you've just separated or whatever, you cannot go down there and say the other parent can't pick the child up. The other parent can't talk to the teacher. The other parent can't get the report card. That's not going to work. You have no more rights than anybody else, than the other parent. Now, the parents are going to have to do something, right? What frustrates us here is sometimes our clients come and say, I can't get any information from the school. And I'm like, have you reached out to them? Yes. Do they know who you are? No. Have you gone down and given them a copy of your driver's license or your passport or any positive identification showing that you really are John Smith and you really are the parent, maybe a birth certificate, and you are the parent of Eric Smith? Well, no. If you do that, I guarantee you they're going to communicate with you unless there's a court order that says the other side is sole legal custody. And in 95% of the ones where one side gets sole legal custody, which is extremely rare, the court will still give the non-legal parent access to the teachers and the school records. It is extremely rare, like 0.001% that a parent would not have access to the teachers or the records of their child's education.
Got it. Okay. And like you said, if you've got a parent that maybe is controlling in the way that they try to limit whatever information you're receiving, you can go straight to the school.
Correct.
And just say, send it to me directly because, my co-parent is not co-parenting very well.
And you have to do it. And what's frustrating us is sometimes parents will not do that. Like they won't actually go do what we're telling them. Go to school, give them a copy of your ID, make sure you prove to them that you are the parent you say you are. Yeah. Add your name to the emergency contact list.
And there's nothing stopping them from helping you.
Right. One of the most frustrating things that happens is when one parent enrolls the kid for school and they leave off the other parent's name, the other parent's spouse, the other parent, is nobody. So
no contact information.
No contact. So we end up in a custody situation, and I get the school record, and I'm looking, and it's like father, and it's mom's boyfriend or mom's new husband.
Oh, geez.
Right? Emergency contacts. Mom's boyfriend, mom's new husband, mom's mom, mom's sister. Nowhere is it the father, father's wife, father's girlfriend, father's mother. Nothing. It is just one side, to where that school doesn't even know that other parent who exists.
Yeah.
But you have to be proactive. If you're a parent and you're in a case where the other side is not going to give you information, or they're going to actively try to keep you from gaining information, you've got to proactively go get it. Yep. All these schools have websites. They all have emails, and now all the grades, for the most part, in the middle and high schools are online. You get access to that. You can see the grades in real time so that you can be a participant, but you're going to have to make some effort to do it. It's not just going to happen for you.
Yes. Yeah. I totally get that.
Have family law questions? Need guidance to navigate legal challenges? The compassionate team at Breeden Law Office is here to help. Visit us at www.breedenfirm.com for practical advice, resources, or to book a consultation. Remember, when life gets messy, you don't have to face it alone.
So, okay, last question. Do parents have to agree on those emergency contacts that they put down on their emergency contact list?
I don't. It would be nice.
It would be nice.
You know what I'm saying? But they don't always agree. And that ends up being a problem. And the school has to do the best it can. And my experience is the school will take, really, as many people as you want to put down there. I mean, they're going to be trying to get somebody who can help this child, and they're going to start with the parents, because the parents are the ones who can consent to medical care. Yeah. These other people cannot. I mean, they may be, and then the other fight that we always have is who's on the school pickup list, who has the authority and to
temporarily gain custody of that child.
Right. Is who could be on the pickup list. And that's a big fight. And my experience is the school system will allow, if during your custodial time, you want to put somebody on the pickup list for your custodial time, most of the time they're fine with that, and vice versa. But it's amazing how many times somebody doesn't want somebody, often the moms, will have primary custody, or at least will be sort of in charge until we can get to court most of the time while we're trying to work it out. And they'll go down there and not want anybody connected to dad to be able to pick the child up, and except for dad. But dad's got to work, so he needs his mom to do it. Yeah. And so we get in a fight about that. I've had some hearings with judges over who could be on the school pickup list before. Mm-hmm. It's amazing people would spend thousands of dollars for a hearing over who could pick the kid up at 3:30 from the carpool line, but people do it. It's amazing to me.
I mean, if that's where you want to put your money.
If that's where you want to put your money, I mean, but so it would be nice if they did agree. I do think that each parent during their custodial time, as long as they're picking somebody who has a valid driver's license, don't send somebody who doesn't have a valid driver's license, or who is not familiar with the child. You know what I mean? It needs to be somebody the child knows. Yeah. They need to have a valid driver's license. They need to have a safe working vehicle. Yeah. These
probably
types
preferably
of things.
No convictions or anything like that.
Well, I mean,
it depends on what it is.
Right. You don't want to be on the sex offender registry.
Yeah.
I've had a few of those cases.
Oh, no.
So, but they need to be familiar to the child. And, it probably should be limited if possible. You know what I mean? If you work in the afternoons, most of the time the child ride the bus. If you're not able to go pick the child up, it really needs to be in a sort of a unusual situation. Or grandma, I've never seen a judge tell a grandma they couldn't be on the pickup list. Yeah. Kids love grandmas love kids. If one parent thinks that grandma should be able to do it, but of course then the ex-spouse or ex-partner hates grandma and is just trying to, and the thing about it is fighting over stuff like that doesn't actually accomplish anything, right? No. So much better when parents can try to get along. And most of the time, they agree as to what should happen and where the kid can go to school. And most parents are happy with their schools, their child's school, and the education they're getting and the teachers. We got a good school systems in Johnston, Hardin, and Wake counties where we primarily practice. It really is, unfortunately, just a way to mess with the other side. And the only person that actually is getting hurt is the child.
Yep.
And we try to get parents to agree, and it's just sad. We're trying to get kids into school, and we've got parents fighting us on getting a child into school because the child moved from one parent to the other parent's home. And, that parent doesn't want to agree for the child to change schools.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just unfortunate. Like, the child needs to get an education, but the parent wants to put their pettiness and their upsetness that the child would change.
Or their convenience. The parents care more about their convenience than the child's education.
Right.
I've, had examples of that where it's the higher rated school might be a little bit further away, but the parents, this one's more convenient for me, so we're going to go with the lower rated school. And it's like, well,
yeah, but the school ratings, I mean, that's kind of, I don't know. I think the school rating system is a little suspect, because I think the school rating system is largely based on the population going to the school. It doesn't absolutely tell you what you need to know about that school system moving any individual child forward. Mm-hmm. It is harder to move socioeconomically disadvantaged children because they're not going home to stable homes. Maybe they don't have food every night. Somebody's not making sure they do their homework. They're not making sure they go to bed on time. I don't care how good a teacher you have. If that is a large portion of your school's population, the school is not going to rate well on any scorecard. Yep. So I try to move away from the scorecards just personally, because and maybe because I grew up in what would be deemed some of the worst public schools in North Carolina, in Scotland County. And I got a very rural, lot of economically depressed area, a lot of people that didn't have a whole lot doing the best they could do. And I got a tremendous education. So I'm not a big person on, the ranking of the school. If you want to look at something, look at the growth, the expected growth numbers, right? That's the thing where you're trying to take similarly situated students and seeing if they're able to move those versus the overall, this school doesn't do well. And you look at it and 50% of the students are on free and reduced lunch, and they're not going to come to school as ready to learn maybe as some other kids. So I don't know. That's just my take. I think people put too much weight on those. If you go to a school and you feel comfortable, people are going there and their kids are getting a good education, I think that's all that really matters.
Yeah. And I will say, so when it comes to like the school pickup and the emergency contacts and whatnot, if there's because I know this is becoming more and more common, an agreement between the parents that they won't introduce their kids to any significant others for a certain amount of time. Maybe it's 3 months, maybe it's 6 months. I've heard up to a year, whatnot. Don't send those people to go pick up your kids. Right. Before that point in time.
Right. If that's part of your court order and the person's never met the child, then no, they wouldn't be to go pick up the kid. Yeah. But most judges are going to be like, as long as these people are known to the child, grandma, whatever, the courts, if it's your time, I think the court would be fine with you appointing whoever you want to pick up the child on your time. And if you don't have any school days in your custodial schedule, then you're probably not going to be able to add anybody other than yourself to the pickup list, because otherwise the child wouldn't be picked up.
Yeah. Well, and unless there's, like I said, emergency situations where the other parent might need help.
Correct.
So get it. And that's all we have.
Well, cool. All right. Well, good. I hope y'all have enjoyed this special edition episode of the Best of Johnston County Podcast, which we call Ask Jonathan Breeden Anything. Normally, we do our podcast is where we interview interesting guests from the community leaders, local elected officials, and small business owners. And every once in a while, we do one of these special episodes where I talk about family law, which is what we do here at the Breeden Law Office. So we hope you enjoyed this special edition episode. Please give us a 5-star review if you enjoyed this podcast. Also, like, subscribe, or follow this podcast so that you're made aware of future episodes of the Best of Johnston County Podcast. Until next time, I'm your host, Jonathan Breeden.
That's the end of today's episode of Best of Johnston County, a show brought to you by the trusted team at Breeden Law Office. We thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to sharing more interesting facets of this community next week. Every story, every viewpoint adds another thread to the rich tapestry of Johnston County. If the legal aspects highlighted raise some questions, help is just around the corner at www.breedenfirm.com.